Hi everyone, Sir Janus here and welcome to another episode of Einsteinatics TV. Today, we are going to put focus on cell division which is covered by Quarter 4 Module 2 of Science 8. So are you ready to learn? For today's video, we have the following objectives as well as yung focus na competency natin for today. So for the most essential learning competencies, we are going to try to compare mitosis and meiosis and ano yung role niya in the cell division cycle. And we are also going to try to explain the significance or yung importansya ng meiosis in maintaining the chromosome number. Specifically, for today's topic, we have the following objective. So we are going to try to describe the cell cycle, identify and describe the stages of mitosis. We are also going to try to describe the stages of meiosis, and of course, we are going to compare kung ano ba yung pagkakapareho at pagkakaiba ng mitosis sa meiosis. Gentle reminders before proceeding. Feel free to pause the video anytime to soak up the concepts. Pause the video, especially when answering the assessments or activities. You may use separate papers for your answers, or you may download the module provided by the link on the video description. And most important of all, please don't forget to subscribe so that you will be updated for more educational videos. Before we start, let us try to answer this question. Bakit nga ba kailangang mag-divide or mag-multiply ng cells? Now, to answer this, i-imagine mo if they didn't or kung hindi or walang kakayahan yung cell na mag-divide. Unang-una, yung organisms would only ever exist as single cells. So it would be fine for mga bacteria pero not so much with plants and animals. So we really need to have cell division. Ikalawang scenario na pwedeng mangyari pag walang kakayahan or hindi na mag-divide yung cells, of course, yung mga old at pati yung mga damaged cells will never be replaced, and that would be the end of the organism. And yung last reason or ano yung last na mangyayari pag hindi mag-divide yung cell is that organisms wouldn't reproduce. So that these are the reasons why cells need to undergo division. So based sa sinabi ko kanina, ano nga uli yung reason bakit kailangan mag-divide ng cells, or why is it that cells need to undergo cell division? So una, yung reason is of course the main purpose why cells divide is for reproduction. Okay, so for example, this would undergo asexual reproduction, especially on one-celled organisms. Second reason why cell needs to divide is for growth. Okay, so from fertilized egg to multi-celled organism. And the last one is for repair and renewal. So this is to replace cells that die from normal wear and tear or from injuries. So imagine if hindi walang kakayahan yung cell na mag-divide, so these processes would be impossible. So there are two types of cell division that we are going to cover for today's video. Yung una is yung mitosis, yung ikalawa naman is meiosis. Now, to give an idea kung ano yung pagkakaiba nila, yung mitosis usually happens sa mga cells in the body, to include yung bone cells, fat cells, skin cells, nerve cells, and other body cells. On the other hand naman, yung meiosis only happens sa mga sick cells, to include yung sperm cell at saka yung egg cells. So whenever cells divide, it is essential that genes are copied into new cells. So remember that yung genes is the basic unit of inheritance. So ibig sabihin, nandito lahat ng mga characteristic of an organism. So based on your previous discussions, you already know na yung genes is located sa chromosome, each of which is made of very long, tightly coiled molecule of DNA. Ano nga uli yung DNA? It stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. You should remember that different organisms have different numbers of chromosomes. Sa mga tao, we have 46 chromosomes. So ito yung tinatawag na diploid number of humans. So yung chromosome na magkapares ay tinatawag na homologous chromosome. Sa bawat pares, one chromosome has been inherited from the mother at yung isa naman is inherited from the father. So this one, yung chromosome from the mother and yung chromosome from the father is known as the homologous pair. Now, let's proceed with the first cell division that we are going to take up today, which is on mitosis. So here is an overview on the process. So, yung mitosis is divided into these stages. First one is interphase, followed by prophase, then prometaphase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So, para mas madali nyo siyang ma-remember, so we can use this one. So, it can be represented by IPMAT, which represents I, represents interphase, P for prophase, M is for metaphase, anaphase, and the last stage or the last phase of mitosis is telophase. Let's proceed with the first stage or the first phase of mitosis, which is known as interphase. So one thing that you should remember about interphase is that 90% of the cell life cycle takes place in the interphase. So this is where the cell doing its everyday job. So dito, nagpo-produce siya ng RNA and of course, gumagawa siya ng proteins and enzymes. So it also prepares for the duplication is triggered as a preparation for the cell cycle. One important concept to remember that every cell has a life cycle. So una, every cell is formed from a mitotic division. So this is divided into two. Yung una, yung cell grows and matures to divide again. So, just like in growth phase, synthesis phase, gap phase, and yung mitotic phase. So, this includes yung epithelial cells, blood cells, and stem cells. On the other hand naman, yung cell grows and matures to never divide again. So, this includes yung growth phase, and this includes yung mga brain, nerve cells, and muscle cells. So, yung mga liver cells naman is merong kakayahan siya mag-undergo ng it matures and also divide again. Interphase is divided into three phases. The first one is the G1, known as the first gap or the growth phase. So this is where the cell is doing its everyday job. This is also where the cell grows, and also this is where the signal to divide comes from. Now, another phase is the S phase or known as the DNA synthesis. In this phase, this is where the DNA or the cell copies chromosomes. And the third one or the last one is known as the G2 or the second gap or the growth phase. So in this phase, the cell prepares for division, and this is where the cells grow more and it produces organelles, pati yung mga proteins and membranes. In interphase, it is important to remember that the nucleus is well defined. Ibig sabihin, madali siyang makita. And it is composed of the DNA wherein it is loosely packed in long chromatin fibers. Just like as you can see here, parang mga maliliit na hibla. In interphase also, it prepares for mitosis, wherein it replicates chromosomes. Another is the DNA and proteins, and it also produces proteins and organelles. On the S phase of the interphase, this is where the copying and the replicating of DNA takes place. So, in synthesis phase of interphase, like what I have said, this is where dinidivide yung cell and it replicates DNA. So, it must separate DNA copies correctly to two daughter cells, such as what is shown on the illustration. So, paano nga ba ino-organize yung DNA in preparation for division? So, yung DNA is organized into chromosomes. So, as you can see, yung structure of the chromosome is known as the double helix or the DNA molecule. So, it is wrapped around histone proteins like thread on spools, and DNA protein complex is equals to chromatin. So, organized into long thin fibers such as this one, and condense further during mitosis. So, ito yung duplicated mitotic chromosome, and this is now the double-stranded chromosomes. So, what happens after copying DNA and packaging it? So, yung nangyayari is that after DNA duplication, so yung chromatin now would condense. So, yung coiling at saka yung folding to make smaller packages. So as you can see here on the illustration, so it would now begin or start or to prepare for the mitosis cell division. So one thing that you should remember about mitotic chromosomes or yung chromosome involved in mitosis is that they are duplicated chromosomes. So it produces two sister chromatids and they are narrow at centromers. So you should remember that in mitotic chromosome, they contain identical copies of the original DNA. So let's start with the process of mitosis. So yung mitosis is dividing cell DNA between two daughter nuclei, and these are known as the dance of the chromosome. So it has four phases. So yung first one is known as the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. You might be wondering, ano nga ba yung mga important process that takes place in prophase? So sa prophase, this is where visible chromosomes are observed. And also, yung mga centrioles, such as this one, will now move to the opposite poles. Okay. And aside from that, the protein fibers cross cell to form mitotic spindle. And this is also where the nucleolus disappears and yung nuclear membrane breaks down. Itong nagpo-protect ngayon sa chromosomes would eventually disappear in preparation for the cell division. After prophase, the next stage is known as the transition to metaphase or also known as pro-metaphase. So yung important na nangyayari dito is that yung spindle fibers would now attach to the centromers. And yung creating of the kinetochores. And also, this is where now the chromosome begin moving to the center of the cell in preparation for metaphase. After the pro-metaphase, we will now proceed to metaphase. So dito yung nangyayari is that yung chromosome align along the middle of the cell or yung sa pinakagitna. Now, kaya ito tinawag na metaphase kasi yung tinatawag na meta, which means middle. Kaya nga yung mga chromosomes is naka-align dito sa gitna. Okay, so ito yung mga spindle fibers coordinate movement and also helps to ensure chromosomes separate properly so that each of the new nucleus receives only one copy of each chromosome. So here's another look on the metaphase stage of the cell division. After metaphase, the next stage would be anaphase. So ano nga ba yung mga nangyayari dito sa metaphase? So kung kanina, yung mga chromosomes are nakalinya dito sa gitna, ngayon, in the process of anaphase, yung mga sister chromatids na ngayon would separate at the kinetochores. So aside from that, yung mga sister chromatids now would now move to the opposite poles of the cell. And aside from that, they would be pulled by the centromers such as this one. Ito yung mga tinutukoy na mga centromers. Okay, so aside from that, they are pulled by motor proteins or walking along the microtubules. And the poles move farther apart and the polar microtubules lengthen. So here's another look kung paano nga ba nagse-separate yung mga chromatids. So during anaphase, yung proteins holding together sister chromatids are inactivated. So kung titingnan natin yung figure, so kung kanina ito, this is one just chromosome and consists of two chromatids. By the time after sa anaphase, so it would result in, as you can see, dalawang chromosome na but it would be now single-stranded. The next stage that would take place after anaphase is known as telophase. So in here, yung chromosomes now would arrive on the opposite poles, as you can see here. And yung daughter nucleoli would form, and nucleoli would form, and also the chromosomes would disperse. So spindle fibers would also disperse, and yung cytokinesis begins. After telophase, eventually, it would now lead to cytokinesis. So in animals, this is where yung cleavage furrow would form. So yung makikita mo dito, parang yung separation between the two daughter cells. And eventually, it would now separate into two cells. So from 1, after cell division, it would now produce into 2 daughter cells. So it splits in 2 and like tightening a drawstring. So here's another look at cytokinesis. So yung cleavage furrow first would form and eventually it would separate into daughter cells. So after mitosis, we will now proceed to the next type of cell division known as meiosis. So what are the important concepts to remember when dealing with meiosis? So unang-una is that meiosis is similar in many ways to mitosis. However, it also has several differences or meron din silang mga pagkakaiba. So, yung meiosis involves 2 cell division wherein sa mitosis is meron lang isang cell division. So, as a result, yung meiosis now because of the 2 cell division would result into 4 cells with 1/2 of the normal genetic information. So, here are important words that you should remember when dealing with meiosis. So, unang-una, yung tinatawag na diploid. Pag sinabing diploid or 2N, it refers to yung normal amount of the genetic material. Pag sinabi namang haploid, it refers to 1/2 the genetic material. So, yung meiosis results in the formation of haploid cell. Ibig sabihin, kalahati lang ng genetic material yung makikita doon sa kanilang mga daughter cells. So, in humans, these are the ova or ovum in egg and sperm. And ova are produced in the ovaries in females, whereas yung process ng pag-form ng egg cells is known as oogenesis. On the other hand naman, yung sa male naman, yung sperm cells are produced in the testes. So yung ito, kung kanina oogenesis para sa pag-produce ng egg cell, yung process naman of creating sperms is known as spermatogenesis. So, in encapsulation, yung meiosis would now takes place into 6 cells, specifically dito sa paggawa ng mga sperm cell and of course sa paggawa ng mga egg cell. So, unlike in mitosis, sa meiosis we have 2 phases. So, it is known as Meiosis I and Meiosis II. So, in Meiosis I specifically, prior to the division, kung makikita ninyo, yung amount or yung dami ng DNA is dumodoble. So, during Meiosis I, specifically sa metaphase I, yung homologous chromosome would now line up along the metaphase plate. However, unlike in mitosis, merong nagaganap na tinatawag na crossing over. So, ano nga ba yung crossing over? Kung makikita ninyo, this is where yung dalawang chromosome, yung sister chromatids would now in contact with each other and kung saan sila nag-connect, this is known as chiasmata. So, ano nga ba yung nangyayari sa crossing over? So, yung crossing over of genes would occur during the metaphase I and segments of homologous chromosome break and reform at similar locations such as this one. So after that, it would now result in the new genetic combinations of offspring. So that is why, unlike in mitosis, yung sa meiosis, yung kanyang daughter cells is different dun sa kanyang parent cell. So as a result, this is now the main advantage of sexual reproduction kasi it would now lead to variations or uniqueness of an individual. So during anaphase I, it would now undergo the so-called chromosome reduction. So each homologous chromosome is pulled to the opposite sides of the cell, but unlike mitosis, wherein nag-separate yung sister chromatids, the centromeres do not break. So kung titingnan natin, andito yung sa mitosis, yung sa meiosis naman is andito. So itong kanyang mga chromatids is hindi siya nag-separate. Unlike sa mitosis wherein itong mga chromatids is naghihiwalay and is pulled on to the opposite sides of the pole. So here's an overview on Meiosis I. So andito yung prophase I, metaphase I, anaphase I, and of course telophase I and cytokinesis. During telophase, yung nuclei may or may not reform following division, and of course yung cytokinesis may also would not occur. So, after Meiosis I, it would now proceed to Meiosis II. Kung titingnan ninyo, yung parent cell is isa. After Meiosis I, we have now two daughter cells. So, ano nga ba yung nangyayari dito sa Meiosis II? So, dito sa Meiosis II, itong dalawang daughter cell would now undergo another cell division. Okay, so however, dito sa Meiosis II, yung DNA does not double. Also, yung chromosomes randomly line up along the metaphase plate like regular mitosis. And during anaphase 2, centromeres would now break and each chromosome is pulled to the opposite sides of the cell. And also, pagdating na dito ngayon sa Meiosis II, yung nuclear reform and cytokinesis would now occur. So, you might be wondering, ano nga ba yung pagkakaiba ng mitosis sa meiosis? So, pwede natin gamitin itong mnemonics na tinatawag na disco pug. So, itong aso na mahilig sa disco. So, for division, sa mitosis, we only have one cell division, whereas in meiosis is dalawa. In assortment naman, sa mitosis, no. Sa meiosis naman, yes. Kasi, nangyayari dito yung crossing over. Synapses, no. And meiosis naman is yes because it forms bivalence. Crossing over, no. And sa meiosis naman is yes in prophase 1. Yung outcome nito, yung result ng daughter cells is dalawa sa mitosis, whereas sa meiosis is 4. Yung kanyang ploidity naman is you have mitosis is diploid, whereas meiosis is haploid. Ibig sabihin ng diploid class, kung sa humans, 43 yung chromosomes na napoproduce, whereas dito, not 43 but 46, whereas dito sa haploid naman is only 23 yung mga daughter cells. Yung use naman for mitosis is usually involved for body cells, whereas sa meiosis is 6 cells. And sa genetics naman, identical cells, whereas dito yung meiosis because of crossing over, so meron siyang variation or pagkakaiba-iba. So, did you get it? This time, let us check how much you have learned from today's topic. So, feel free to pause the video while answering and press play to check kung tama yung sagot mo. So, are you ready? For the first challenge, you may refer to the different stages of mitosis below. So, pili ka on the choices that is given underneath the illustrations to describe the important events that happen in each stage. So you may choose your answer from the box and you may write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. So while answering, you may pause the video and to check whether you get the correct answer or not, you just press play. Okay? Okay, so here's the correct answer. So number 1 is D. So for D is DNA replicates, centrioles divide, and proteins are actively produced. So number 2 naman is E. Number 3 is B, number 4 is A, and of course, number 5 is C. So, did you get it all correct? If so, congratulations! For the next quiz, let us make it more challenging. So, what you will do is you are going to check the processes listed below, wherein these are the different processes involved in meiosis. So, you are going to read and analyze the processes, then determine if this happens under Meiosis I or Meiosis II. So what you will do is you're just going to write M1 for Meiosis I and M2 for Meiosis II. So you may use a separate sheet of paper for your answer. So you may feel free to pause the video while answering and press play to check whether you got the correct answer or not. So good luck! So here's the correct answer. So did you get it all correct? If so, congratulations! Now, for the last challenge, so based from your understanding from the previous activities, and as you have read and studied the diagrams between mitosis and meiosis, what you will do now is you are going to compare mitosis with meiosis. So what would be now the basis for our comparison? The first one is you are going to identify what are the number of divisions involving mitosis and meiosis, the pairing of homologous chromosome, yung number of daughter cells produced, number of chromosomes produced, and type of cells involved, and lastly, the purpose of each type of cell division. So, just like the other two activities, feel free to pause the video while answering and press play to check your answer. So, here are the correct answers. For mitosis, the number of division is 1, meiosis is 2, pairing of homologous chromosome, it does not occur in mitosis. However, in meiosis, it occurs in prophase 1 or yung crossing over. Now, in terms naman of number of daughter cells produced, 2 identical cells. Sa meiosis naman, 4 non-identical cells. Sa number of chromosomes produced, diploid, and this one is haploid. So, ibig sabihin, kalahati lang yung chromosomes, meron yung sa meiosis for the daughter cells. Type of cells involved sa mitosis is yung sa body cells, whereas sa meiosis naman yung sa reproductive cells referring to the sperm and the egg. Yung purpose naman for mitosis is for growth and repair. However, for meiosis, yung main purpose niya is for the production of gametes for sexual reproduction. So, did you get it all correct? If so, congratulations! So, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and ring the bell for you to be updated to the upcoming video. So, Einsteinatics out!